Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jessenia Tweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Welcome to another episode. Yeah, the North London Derby is here and I'm nervous. I cannot lie. I woke up this morning and I don't know if you guys get this way, but it's like all of it rushes at you at one time. I was totally normal for the entire week. And then all of a sudden today, when I was getting ready for the show, I was like, yeah, I'm nervous. Like I really, really want us to win this game. And I want us to win every game, obviously. But this game, any Arsenal fan understands that this game means more than anything because it's your arch nemesis, it's your enemy, it's, you know, your scar to your Mufasa. It's the person that you want to beat more than anything. And I think that over the years, because Spurs have become a part of the Big Six and they have been moving into a space where they're being considered more seriously by, you know, the media, the league, all that kind of stuff. It's really important for Arsenal to make it known that we're the big team. Like we're the big club. Like you can't just forget about us because Spurs are playing well right now. And it's time to set the record straight. I do think that they had some good years with Pochettino, moved into the Jose Mourinho situation. It wasn't great, had Nuno, and then moved into this Conte era. And we have been kind of trying to rebuild and reset over that time. And now we're coming up against each other. We're going to have a pretty strong team. They're going to have a strong team. They're not going to be in limbo. We're not going to be in limbo. And I think this is probably the best opportunity to see where both clubs are at when they go head to head. Last season, at the end of the season, when we played them, as disappointing as that was, and as pivotal as that game was for both teams in terms of their aspirations for the end of the season to make top four, I don't think you can overlook the aspect of where we were and where they were in terms of the squad. They had reinforced their squad with two players in Bentancur and Kulusevski. We did not reinforce our squad. In fact, we got weaker or we had less numbers. And then we went into a period of real injury issues with not having Thomas Partey, having Gabriel Magalhaes and Ben White also dealing with some muscle injuries. Lacazette being terrible, trying to rely upon the likes of Eddie and Kedia, and our season just fell by the wayside. And so, but we finished 2 points below them, which was devastating, but not a big margin, nothing to be alarmed about in terms of are they running away from us. And I think, even at the beginning of last season when we played them and we beat them at the Emirates, they were in somewhat of a crisis with Nuno. As good as we played, I don't think you can overlook the fact that they were playing under a manager that most of the players had down tools on. So this is the first time that we're going to be meeting each other with the new managers where I think both teams are in a really good space. We'll be missing a player, maybe they'll be missing a player, but ultimately it's going to be a good litmus test. And I think it's a huge opportunity for Arsenal to really, again, set the record straight, set our season off in the right direction to get that feeling of not being able to beat the big teams or whatever from the Man United game and last season, and just move into the next season of this project because there's still some boxes that need to be ticked with this team. I do think that we're playing good football, but we're playing good football last season, especially from November on. I thought what we're seeing now is just a better version of what we were doing last season, which was more than good enough to get into the top four. But when it really came down to it and we needed to perform against the bigger teams and we needed to be good in high pressure situations, we did not deal with those well enough. And so this is a huge opportunity for Arsenal to really turn the page. I think a lot of the media and the fan base in particular gave Arsenal a pass for the Man United game. Like, not really a pass, but they looked really good, so it's nothing to be worried about. But if for some reason we don't beat Spurs and we lost to Man United, I do think you're going to be looking at that Liverpool game like there's more pressure on that to really kind of tick that box of being able to beat the big teams. And so, especially when you're on top. So, yeah, it's a really big opportunity for Arsenal. I do think that it's not a must-win game. I hate those types of conversations where it's not really a must-win game, but we set these little things and we're like, okay, well, we have to win this game or else what's going to happen. But I do think that there is pressure around this game in terms of where we are, where they are, and I think the team that wins this will be put onto a trajectory in a positive way, and the other team will have to kind of like reset a little bit, if that makes sense. Like I think if we don't win, we will need to reset a little bit and really think, why can't we get over the hump when we're under pressure? Because right now, it's not like it's the end of the season, but there is pressure to continue on this good run, which is what most good teams have. They have the pressure of continuing a good run, not coming up from behind and trying to catch the pack. And so, yeah, it's a huge opportunity for Arsenal. Let me see what you guys are saying. I just rambled like so much. um, Mackenzie Edwards says, "What's going to be the excuse now for me? Every time we play them, it's a must-win game." It is a must-win game in terms of the rivalry and all that kind of stuff, but when we say must-win games, like, I think when you say it's a must-win game, it's a game that if you do not win, it's the the consequence of that is so detrimental to your season that it derails everything. That's a must-win game for me. So, like, a must-win game last season probably was Spurs away. That was a must-win game. Obviously Newcastle away was a must-win game. This at the beginning of the season, beyond like the rivalry, is not must win. Like our season won't end, but it does keep that cloud above Arsenal where it's like, okay, we play pretty football, we look great, we've reset the side. But is this football winning football? Is it the type of football that will get us over the line against the big teams? And do we have the mentality and the strength and the experience to get those types of results? So I understand it's a must-win game, it's a must-win game, but I think it's a must-win in terms of the rivalry and, wanting to tick that box, but is our season over if we don't win? No. But I see like some people like to set it up that way so that they can make an overarching generalized statement about where we are based on one match, and that's just not really how I work. Zach 10 says Jesus won't get a card. In fact, he will get a red instead. I would love to see a Spurs player get a red card, but they don't get them very often. Let's see. Psydark says, for me, the real nemesis is Man United. Well, it depends on when you grew up watching Arsenal, what was the rivalry that was there and most prevalent when you were first started watching Arsenal. Maybe for me, like it is Man United. Like I hate them with all of my spirit. Like it's very, very difficult for me to see them win a game. I celebrate their losses more than I celebrate our wins. It's just a deep rooted hatred of Man United. It's very hard for me to even speak about them. When it comes to Spurs, it's different because it's just a rivalry that is there. I do hate them and despise them, but like Man United is personal for me. So I do understand what you're saying, but like let's not beat around the bush. This is very, very important. I think a lot of it is just because of like where they're at in the table and where we're at in the table as well. Like this is a big litmus test, I think. Um Let's see. iGamer says, Jess, how can you be rational on the eve of a North London derby? Because I have to be, because I'm gonna spend the next after I get off of this show, I'm gonna be going onto the football terrace and speaking directly to a Spurs fan about how I think we're gonna beat them. So that's gonna be, you know, a lot. We're gonna do a watch along, and I'm gonna be on pins and needles. I'm gonna have to do the after show and be either on cloud 9 or in the depths of hell. So, right now I'm just trying to, like, live as well as I can, but yeah, I'm not doing too well on the inside, but I'm trying to remain calm. Um, let's see. Channel is void says it's not just a big month if we beat Spurs and Liverpool. It sets the standard and sets the pace of the season. No, I do think that's true. Like it will set us up in a way where I do think if you beat Spurs and you beat Liverpool early on in the season, people start thinking about you differently. You've ticked the boxes of being able to beat the big teams. Um, Even if it's in your backyard, like it's still important to do that. We did not beat Liverpool at home. So I do think it sets the tone and like you said, sets the pace for what our expectations should be. And if we win these two games, my expectations might change. Like, my expectations instead of thinking, "Okay, well, do we just have to get top 4?" might be, "We need to push a little bit harder," and try to, um our expectations should change, I'll just say that. So, yeah, I do think that makes a lot of sense, but let's see how things really pan out. Zach 10 says, "Wow, Jess just confessed to celebrating a Man United L more than an Arsenal win." It's just I hate them so much. Like, I don't think you guys understand. Like, it feels so good when they lose. I've loved them being terrible for so long. I fear that they will come back and be good again, and like, my heart just gets like, "Oh," when we have to play against Man United. I was unwell after we lost to them. I was unwell. Yeah. So, getting into the nitty-gritty of it, I think it's important to kinda speak about, um, injuries and things like that because, a lot of Arsenal fans have been worried about that in the build up to this game and the build up to this 9 games in 30 days run that we have going on. And, we've gotten the news about Emil Smith Rowe that he's gonna be out until earliest December because he had surgery because of his groin injury or groin issues. And so we wish him obviously speedy recovery and all of that. But I was not really expecting him to be available to us anytime soon. So for me, it wasn't a big deal. For it is because you definitely want as many weapons as you have available to you. But Emil Smith Rowe, I think it has been alluded to or, you know, kind of hinted from the club and journalists that he was going to be out for a sustained amount of time without a a date to come back. And so we have confirmation of that. So we just have to hope he's ready to go after the World Cup and wish him the best. But nevertheless, I think that's gonna be the only long-term injury that we have going on. I think Arteta in his press conference said that, the players that we were most worried about in the short term, which is Zinchenko, Partey, and Tierney, are in the squad for tomorrow, and they are a part of the team. That's a good sign. I mean, Arteta's pretty always, like, close to his chest with his cards in terms of who's available and who's not. And so, he was never going to say, like, yeah, they're going to start, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. So, them being in the squad, I think, is important. Tierney is not somebody that I was particularly worried about because we know it was just a precautionary concussion sub from his game against Scotland. Martin Odegaard played against for Norway, so I wasn't really worried about him either. Zinchenko's been sitting on his ass for 2 weeks, so he should be ready to go. And then here comes the big one, which is Thomas Partey. So he's the key to everything. I don't know if you guys saw the graphic going around on Twitter. I don't know if I saved it or not. I don't think I did. But basically the graphic just showed how reliant upon Thomas Partey we are and how much better of a side we are when Thomas Partey plays. Let me see if I can pull it up maybe if it shows up. Um I don't know why I didn't save it. Oh, here it goes. It's from Harvey Downs. I guess I'll show this to you guys. I'll share my screen so you guys can see. There's 87 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Here we go. So yeah, can you guys see that? Good. So yeah, this is from Harvey Downs, and with Partey, 28 games, there's 20 wins, 2 draws, and 6 losses. I would say if you really look at it, like 2 of those losses were against Man City and Liverpool, and in both of those games, he was probably man of the match and the best player on the pitch. So, it wasn't really, some of those games are like really big games that we just didn't have more maybe in the attack or, whatever, enough experience at the back. But 2 just over 2 points per game when he plays, 71% win percentage, 2 goals per game. Like, he is the difference. He really, really is for Arsenal. In the games without him, there were 17 games without him. We only won 8. We lost 8. And I think a lot of those were with Sambi playing, and some of those were big, big matches. If you think about early on last season, we played Man City, we played Chelsea, we played Liverpool. Those 3 games in particular, like Sambi did play in those games, and even Man United this season, there's just a gap in quality between the 2 players, and it's expected. Thomas Partey is 30 and Sambi is 22, and they're just not the same player, and El Neni is not the same player either. So, I think it is important for Thomas Partey to play in this match. I do think he will play. It's just a matter of, like, hopefully he's fit enough, and doesn't have any, lingering fitness issues, because we also know that even though Thomas Partey, like, even if he's fit and, like, ready to play, there's been games in the past where he just hasn't looked great after the international break, and so I am worried about that a little bit, but I think he'll play. I think pretty much our strongest lineup will be out there, and it'll just be a matter of whether or not the team, I think, has the ability to play their way, but also be smart enough not to get picked off on the counter, because I don't think Spurs are going to do anything different to what they've been doing against most possession sides, most possession based sides. Like when they played against Chelsea, Chelsea dominated. They had like 64% of the ball, and I thought Spurs were lucky to get anything out of that game, but Chelsea played them off the park, but Spurs still got something, because in the end of the day, like, whether it's from a corner or them getting a penalty or them playing on the counter, they're pretty devastating in all 3 instances, all 3 ways. Like, they can really kill you. So I think they will probably play the same way against us, especially because it'll be the Emirates. The Emirates will be rocking. There'll be a lot of factors that make it so that Arsenal are gonna wanna play their way, but it's just a matter of, like, being smart on the other end, making sure our distances aren't really big in midfield, not if we score, don't get silly and try to score another one right off the bat. Just try to keep possession for a little bit, slow the game down, control the game, and don't let it get away from you, because, Spurs are really devastating when they're in the groove. And what I will say about them, being on international break, I've seen people saying like, well, our players didn't play and their players did play. But the players that they had that were out there that were playing beyond Kane were playing well. Richarlison playing very well for Brazil. Um, Son playing well for South Korea. So I don't necessarily feel like that's any sort of advantage for us. I think confidence is going to be a big factor in this, and Son coming back into form, and Richarlison, who will probably start because, like Zach Ten is saying, Kulusevski is going to be out. It's still going to be a difficult game. Like, it's still going to be a difficult game. I saw a comment about Partey. Gunnar Tabs says calling him the difference is a bit much in my opinion, because this didn't account for the other players that were out the same time Partey was out. Partey is better than Sambi, but it's a lot closer in my opinion. Well, I mean, I do think that makes a little bit of sense in terms of there were other players out at the same time. But what I will say is that there's a general feeling amongst the fan base that when Sambi is there and when Thomas Partey is there, there's definitely a difference in experience and overall presence. And so I do think when it comes to Arsenal and the players that have to be playing, I think they really just come down to Thomas Partey and Gabriel Jesus, like, maybe Saka. I think we can live without the other ones, but I do think Thomas Partey's importance is quite vast and pretty obvious, just by the general feeling of the fan base anytime he twists his ankle or coughs or anything, and just by, it's just the facts, you know what I mean? Like, even though other players were out, it still is just not the same, and so, I get what you're saying. Sambi did okay in the games that we played against Villa and, the other the lower level teams that we played when Thomas Partey was out, but it still wasn't the same, was it? Because basically what happens with Sambi is I do think early on when Sambi is playing, the team doesn't like to pass the ball into him under pressure. They kind of go around him and try to find ways to get around having to play to him because they don't feel confident in passing it to him. He's not really confident in those positions. And unless he's wide the fuck open, they're not passing it to him. And that's very different to what we do with Thomas Partey. So for me, he definitely is like a big factor. Thomas Partey, Gabriel Jesus, um, you'd probably say Ramsdale as well. I know it's not likely that your goalkeeper will be out, but there is a vast difference between what Matt Turner and Ramsdale can do and probably Saka. So we'll see. Crispy Rice says we had both of our fullbacks out and one of our CBs out against Spurs last year. Then Holding had the bonehead moment. That's true. I mean, I actually don't think that, that game at the end of last season was any sort of reflection on where they are and where we are. I think the overall media acted like that was the truth, but there was a lot of um mitigating factors that led to us not having a good game against them. I do think we were naive. I think when you have so many players out, maybe you want to just play to your players' strengths. And I think at that point, away from home, playing to Holding strengths might have been like a back three and sit back a little bit. But ultimately, not having your best players is always going to hurt you. And when you have players do silly things like Holding, he was way too amped up for the game. It is what it is. So, yeah, I think, we have probably as we're going to have a really, really strong team. It's not going to be a team that can't beat Spurs. Maybe Ben White is not available, so Tomiyasu will step in. Maybe Zinchenko doesn't play, Tierney plays. Like, those are the differences that I think we're gonna see. But ultimately, like Martinelli, Saka, Odegaard, Jesus will probably be like what we see up top. And then the midfield is gonna be you know, Xhaka and Partey, and then we'll just see what happens with the fullbacks. That's good enough to beat Spurs. They'll probably have as strong of a lineup as they can possibly have. I don't think not having Kulusevski and dropping Richarlison in is necessarily making them any weaker. If anything, I'd prefer Kulusevski because it's something about Richarlison and him being a wind-up merchant and him liking to fall around in the box that makes me very, very nervous about getting penalties against us and things like that. But at the back, maybe they have Forster instead of Lloris. We just have to see. Conte kind of hinted at like, oh, I don't really want to talk about injuries because I don't want to give Arsenal a advantage. I think he's bullshitting. I think they're going to have maybe even Lloris start. So we'll see what happens. But this is a huge, huge match. Like, it's going to be full of emotion. It's going to be a big opportunity for Arsenal to move into another chapter of what we're trying to do. Beat the big teams when we're supposed to, beat the small teams when we're supposed to. It's a big deal. Lynn says, I think Ramsdale with his distribution of the ball could be a great asset to us tomorrow. It could be, but it's also a matter of what we do with that. I do think that it doesn't work all the time, obviously, because nothing ever works every single time you do it, but I remember against the big teams, especially Manchester City at home and Liverpool at home, there were many opportunities where Ramsdale hit the ball straight to, like, Martinelli in space, and Martinelli would take on Cancelo or Trent Alexander-Arnold, and we had tons of opportunities from those chances, but we didn't really make them into anything, and so Ramsdale's distribution is always an opportunity to exploit the opposition, but ultimately, if you get to the end line and you can't find the pass, or there's nobody in the box, or you scuff the shot, or whatever, it doesn't mean anything. And Spurs are the type of team that are going to give us a lot of space in the box. Like, the opposition gets a lot of touches in their box, they get an easy kind of route into their opposition half. And so it's about whether or not Arsenal have the balls to put the ball in the back of the net. And so Ramsdale is always, like I said, an asset with his distribution, but it's up to the likes of Martinelli and Saka and Jesus and Odegaard in particular to take those chances and make them into goals. Like, we cannot be wasteful against Spurs because they are not wasteful. They get one or two chances and they bury them. And so we can't be a team that does not know how to finish their dinner. It's not going to be cute this time. Nobody's going to give us a, well, they played nice football. We're at our place. We need to be putting the ball in the back of the net. Don one says they give away a lot of chances. They do. For some reason, the other team never seems to, be able to put them away, but we need to be the team that puts it away. So let's kind of talk about how the game needs to go in order for us to win. So we kind of already talked about finishing off our chances. That's a pretty obvious thing to say. It's not anything groundbreaking. We all know that we need to finish our dinner. But I think the key to this game is we need to have the Brentford kind of game at our place. And so what I mean by that is we don't necessarily need to be peppering them. We don't need to be wide open at the back. We don't need to overdo anything because we're at home and we want to show how good we are. We need to control the match. And when we get chances, we have to put them away and we have to be smart and on top of things at the back. I thought one of the best things about the Brentford performance was that we were turned on at every moment in the game, whether it was a throw, a corner, anything. We seemed to have an answer and we seemed to be ready. You cannot turn off for a second against the Spurs team. They will kill you. And so, of course, they're going to play it into space in behind our fullbacks and try to get Son and Kane, or they're going to try to get their wingbacks up and crossing the ball into those spaces and, the corridor of uncertainty and things like that. Those things are going to happen, but our back four needs to be turned on for that and absolutely switched on for everything because they're different than Brentford. I also, like I said, I don't think we need to be peppering their goal and going, you know, hell for leather at every single moment. We need to control the game. If we score first, which I do think the first goal is going to set the tone, if we score first, I do think that we'll win the game. If they score first, I think we're going to be in for a difficult game because as we try to, get the goal back, we'll be more open at the back and then they can go ahead and get a second one. Like, that's pretty obvious. But if we get the first goal, we don't have to get the second one right away. Just control the game for a little bit, pass it around, be disciplined because they're the type of team that feasts off of mistakes and lapses of concentration in and around your back line. Like, that is just not something that you want to do. I forget the last team that they played. It might have been Leicester, but somebody was just fooling around with it back there. Bentancur took the ball off of them and boom, they scored a goal. So we just need to be smart. I think we have to be really, really smart and not get sucked into the emotion of being at the Emirates and feeling like we need to attack them at every single moment. Control the ball, be disciplined, pass it around. If we score the first goal, you don't have to score the second one right away. Just don't get opened up right away. because that's how it happens. You score and then you're immediately under threat for those first 5 to 10 minutes after you score. We tend to give up goals in those next 5 to 10 minutes after we score. And so Spurs are not like the other teams that we usually play where, we could respond really quickly right after we give up a goal. They will bunker in. They have 3 to 5 defenders. Like they're a lot better of a defensive team than we face. So I think it's really important to be disciplined and not get sucked into the emotion of the game. Don't get sucked into the wind up of Richarlison. Don't get sucked into the diving of Kane and Son. And our midfield has to control the game. Now, with Bentancur and Hoiberg, who I assume will play this game, will start this game. Good players. They're very um, agricultural and effective and mechanical with everything that they're trying to do. They're not necessarily going to be very creative or anything, but when it comes down to it and they see the pass into Son or Kane, they will get it to them. So I would expect Partey and Xhaka and Odegaard to be able to control the midfield. If they do try to play a midfield three and bring in somebody additional, so maybe, like you guys said the other day, they play a 3-5-2 and they play Richarlison and Son up top with Kane in the hole, and then they try to play the two and they try to make a midfield up like that. That may be something that they try to do to make up the numbers so that we don't control them. But I still feel like with the way that we try to play and the way we try to control possession, we should be able to win the midfield battle. It's just when we're in those moments when we're trying to attack them and they potentially win the possession back off of us in transition, we need to be switched on because that's when they're going to be to try to pop it to Kane. Kane's going to try to pop it to one of the runners. It's very, very obvious what they try to do. So it's one of those where we just have to be really, really smart. And yeah, I'm just with this game, I think the story is kind of already written. I don't imagine that they're going to dominate possession and we're going to be sitting back in our box. Like the story is kind of written. We just have to be smarter than what we were against Man United and, be able to see the game out from 1 to 90. Even when we played them last season at home, we were beating them up really good, 3-0, but we allowed them to come back into the game. They had enough chances where they could have made it 3-2. They only made it 3-1, but they could have made it 3-2. So, it's about Arsenal being really smart. They're going to target Gabriel. That's obvious. Like they might put Richarlison on that side. And so Gabriel has to be smart, don't get caught up in the wind up and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think that's pretty much like the key to the game. Just be smart. I think that's the thing is like against the big teams, we haven't been smart enough. And so it's not about we know we can play, we know we can defend, we know we can play, we know we can score. It's just a matter of managing the game in a smart way and showing that we have the experience to do so. That's what I'm really looking forward to. Crispy Rice says, I think Saka could terrorize Perisic. He'll need help, which could open up the channels. That's true. Don One says 3-1 easy. Amir says Spurs are annoyingly efficient. Give them 2 chances and they'll probably score them both. If we're clinical, I think we could be very comfortable going into halftime. That's a big if, though. Exactly. It's a big if. I mean, I don't think this game is going to be like super easy or anything like that. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, so they're different than Man United because I think Man United tried to play ball against us, like they really did. And I think we had enough touches in their penalty box where we probably looked back on it and said, why don't we have more than one goal? Like it doesn't make any sense. We should have had more clear-cut chances. With Spurs, I think they're just a well-oiled machine, and when I hear Arsenal fans complain about or continuously say, "But they don't play good football," I'm like, "They're not trying to." That's not the goal for Conte. Their goal is not to play good football. Their goal is to win the match, and what they talk about mostly when they talk about Conte is the fact that he continuously tells them that they're winners, and I think with them, it's more about getting that first trophy and feeling like they can win games with this style that's not particularly nice on the eye or creative at all. but it's just more efficient, and they don't run a lot, they don't press a lot, but they know they have the quality at the top end of the pitch where if they just keep it close and they keep the opposition from scoring those initial goals, they will kill them eventually because what they start to do is they want to start pressing you around the 60th, 70th minute, and then they put you under pressure from there. So I do think that they're a well-oiled machine under Conte, and they don't really care if they have possession. They will back themselves to score a couple of goals and keep you out. And Arsenal just have to be able to put the chances away that we're inevitably going to get. Like, we're going to get a couple of chances. We have to put them away. Um, let's see. Zach 10 says Jess is a fan of Clucking Bell. He stays. I mean, as long as he's not being, like, rude, like, it is what it is. Like, for the most part, I just see you guys, um, going back and forth with each other, so as long as he's not doing anything rude, then fair enough. Gunner Boy says, "We need to target Emerson. I think that's where we can get chances of scoring." I did see something funny, like, Emerson Royale has spent, like, tons of money trying to become a better player, for Conte, and, like, obviously it's not working. Let me see if I can find it. Um, I thought it was so funny. Oh, this is coming from Zach Lowy. He says Emerson Royale has spent 800,000 pounds on trying to become a better footballer since joining Tottenham. He has commissioned a scouting report of Hakimi, purchased his own hyperbaric oxygen tank, and hired a neuroscientist to help him deal with the pressure. Oh, poor baby. It's not helping. It's not helping. So, yeah. Um, Cafuso says, "I hope Jesus can be more in the box than dropping into midfield this game." Well, here's my thing about Jesus and the way that he plays. He does do a lot of the Lacazette type stuff where he drops really deep and does a lot of defending. My issue with him is not being in the box. It's not overcomplicating the chances when he gets them. Like, there are times where he gets into the box and he beats one player, then tries to beat the next one, and when he tries to beat the third one, the chance is gone. And backing himself to be the guy that scores the goals. Like, I do think that he was in the box enough times against Manchester United to make a bigger difference, but I felt like he wasn't didn't have the presence in that game, like, he wasn't demanding it, and he wasn't it was a weird game for him, and so I think with Jesus, he's gonna do the defensive work and do all the hard work, and that's what he's gonna do. When he gets into the box, instead of trying to dribble 1, dribble 2, dribble 3, just fucking shoot, and see what happens. Him and Odegaard drive me insane with that shit, like, just shoot. I think that's my main thing with Jesus, because I know he's gonna do that stuff, that's what he's been asked to do, and I don't want him to stop doing those things, but when he gets into the box, he needs to be the striker that we know that he is. He just doesn't take enough shots, and a lot of it is, "I wanna beat 1, beat 2, beat 3." Don't, just shoot, because you never know what will happen. Crispy Rice says, "If you don't like someone, ignore them or block them, it's just that simple." Ayanle says the most important thing is Partey and Xhaka fit and playing. If they play, we win. If one of them is missing, then we are toast. Sambi isn't ready. So I don't really buy into this idea that Sambi is like an automatic fail. Like, if we have to play with Sambi, that means that the game is lost. But it does significantly drop the percentage of whether or not we're going to win the game, because he just isn't the same as Thomas Partey. I believe Thomas Partey will play. I think he'll start the game. He just better not get hurt. That's really what it is, because we'll need him against Liverpool. But we have more than enough to beat this team. Like, and I think it's like a lot of recency bias of seeing us play against them at the end of last season and feeling like that's what's going to happen again. There was Cedric, it was Holding, it was, players that were really injured. Holding didn't do himself any favors by getting that red card so early. We didn't have Thomas Partey, we didn't have a striker. So it's going to be different facing them this time. they're a strong team and they have the same weapons that they had then and maybe even more. But yeah, it's going to be a really hard game. And so but I think we have more than enough to beat them 100%. So I would go into like, you know, the starting lineup and stuff like that. I'll still do that for you guys and do the create formation thing, but ultimately I think we all are going to pick the same group. So we'll do it anyway. So make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate all your guys' like support. So, during these times where we're not really in the transfer window anymore and it's the beginning of the season, there's nothing really on the line. A lot of people like just don't tune into your channel, and so these are the really difficult moments for creators to continue to go on. But as long as I know you guys are going to be here, I always try to like make sure I can create some consistent content for you guys. And so I really appreciate you guys being here with me. I really appreciate it, especially on a Friday, and because like there's a million other channels that you guys could be watching at this time. So thank you so much. Let's share the screen. Let's do this. Okay. So I'm sure you guys can like see that. Let's see. Yep, you guys can see it. So let's go with the obvious ones first. Ramsdale, um, Gabrielle, please don't do anything stupid, buddy. Saliba, um, hopefully, let's go with the obvious. All right. So we don't have to really talk about these ones because we know these are the ones they're gonna play unless something really, really bad happens from now until the time that we play. But yeah. So basically with the fullbacks, I think I'll ask you guys if who you guys want to see at fullback. Do you guys feel like Tamiyasu should play because he's the better one-on-one defender potentially, or do you think White has done enough to maintain his spot? Do you think that Tamiyasu coming back early from Japan signals maybe a injury for him or for potentially White? Let me know. And then in terms of Zinchenko versus Tierney, I think that's the only really debatable position at this moment. Really debatable. Did Tierney do enough against Brentford to keep his spot, or do you want Zinchenko back into the team because of what he brings on the ball? Let me know what you guys are thinking, and I'll let you guys know what I'm thinking. iGamer says I ain't changing nothing in the back line. So essentially keeping the exact same back line that played against Brentford. Frey says, I feel like Tomiyasu should play. These Tottenham attackers are scary. Craig says, Zinni, in my opinion, he creates so much. Tope says, I would prefer KT and Tamiyasu. They are better defensively. Clucking Bell says, not White. Sun will ruin him like Don Juan's ring. Okay. Gunner Boy says, Ben White should continue as right back. Michael says, for me, it's either Tierney plus White or Zinni plus Tommy. Okay. Do you feel like that's because Zinchenko and Tomiyasu have like the best balance between the two? Because White and Zinchenko for me is good balance as well. So let me know why you think that it has to be those pairings. Crispy Rice says, I just think Tommy is better against Sun. Ayanle says White will get toasted tomorrow. Big games. We need Tierney and Tommy because Ramsdale and Gabrielle get shaky in big games. I think the two players that do transmit the most nervousness in big games are Gabrielle and Ramsdale, and they tend to feed off of each other and manifest like this little nervousness bubble like in the back. And so you want players next to them that are going to be more calm. And it's not that I don't think Zinchenko is calm. Like I do think he is quite calm, but I think Tierney does bring a solidity that Zinchenko doesn't necessarily. And so in the moments where we have to defend, I want somebody there that will block with the ball with his life, that understands that you have to give the blood, sweat, and tears. And I've seen that from Tierney, but I haven't seen it from Zinchenko yet. Like against Man United, it wasn't that Zinchenko didn't play well. It was just that he's just not a defender. Like that's just the reality of him. Like he's an okay left back, but we really play him as a midfielder back there. So I think for me personally, I think Tierney did more than enough against Brentford to keep that spot. And I think he gives the North London Derby vibes that I'm needing. I need somebody that's going to, you know, be bloodied at the end of the game, who's going to put his head in harm's way, who's gonna slide across the box and do a save, like, somebody that's gonna put their body on the line. And it's not that I don't think Zinchenko will do it. I just not sure that he has the defensive awareness to be in those positions the way that Tierney does. And I know that people think that Tierney can't play ball, but he can play ball. He's just not Zinchenko is probably the most technically gifted player in our team, so of course he's not gonna be that, but what he does offer is a more well-rounded approach, and so for me, it has to be Tierney for this game because in the 2, 3, 4 moments where we have to defend, they can't be, like, almost guaranteed goals because the person can't one-on-one defend, if that makes sense. Now, in terms of right back, I think it just has to be White because he hasn't done anything to lose his position, and I would only put Tomiyasu there if, he was not ready to go. I know that some people are saying that White wouldn't do well, but he did really well against Zaha, so I don't know why he wouldn't do a good job against these players. I mean, obviously the distances have to be smaller, and we have to make sure he doesn't get super isolated or anything like that. But I think White will be just fine, and I think he does transmit a level of calmness in the back. And yeah, so we keep the defense the same. I don't see any reason why we would change it. I think very similarly to how Tierney lost his spot earlier on in the season because Zinchenko was here. I do think Zinchenko needs to work his way back in. Tierney, I think, did enough to keep that spot. And same with Tomiyasu. He hasn't done enough for me to usurp Ben White. Phrase says, by the way, I didn't see Odegaard in the official training photos before the game. I saw tons of pics of Vieira. I did see pictures of Odegaard. Um, Yeah, I did see pictures of Odegaard. He was in the pictures. Let me see. I don't know if I can find it again, but I do remember seeing Odegaard. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he's ready to go. Semi says if KT isn't cleared to play, then Tommy must start. Well, I think Kieran Tierney will be ready to play. It was a precautionary concussion sub that was made, so I don't anticipate it being anything significant that would keep him out. And Arteta has like confirmed that he's going to be a part of the team, so I do think Tierney will be able to play. Now with Tomiyasu, that's the beautiful thing about having Tomiyasu on your team is that if for some reason KT and Zinchenko couldn't play, I know Tomiyasu could play there as well. Um, and then he could also play for Gabriel as a left-sided center back. So that's the beauty of having Tomiyasu in the team. I don't think he's done enough to start just yet, but he has a good range of skills and he can do it at such a high level that I wouldn't feel scared putting him in any of those positions, if that makes sense. Um, Crispy Rice says we could always bring in Zinni on to invert if we need to control the midfield. Exactly. Isco says, I think this should be our starting lineup. I think, you know, ultimately, like Vieira, he played really well against Brentford, but Odegaard is the captain. So he comes straight back in. But everybody else, I think, pretty much should stay the same. And then if something changes, you can bring in a Zinchenko. You could do some different things. But yeah, I think this team is the best team to go with for this game. Lynn says, I would like to see Tommy as center back instead of Gabby because he is very calm. Well, the only thing I would say about that is that, of course, like I know Gabriel has his moments, and he may have a moment. You just never really know. But Tomiyasu hasn't played there yet for us, so What I would love to see is against Bodo Glimt this week is for Tomiyasu to play left-sided center back instead of Gabriel. I think Gabriel needs a break, a mental and physical break. So bring Tomiyasu in against Bodo Glimt, let him play left-sided center back, let Cedric play right back. And then one of Tierney or, Zinchenko can play and then just do it that way. But I would wanna see Tommy there first for Arsenal before, we start, moving chess pieces around. And because Saliba and Gabriel's partnership is getting so strong, I wouldn't really wanna disrupt that in such a big game. So, yeah, like, I get that people are worried about Gabriel and his mental lapses sometimes, but yeah, it just is what it is. So yeah, you guys. So, yeah, so this was a little bit of a short one, because like obviously we're gonna have way more to talk about after the game. Previews are weird because you can always talk about hypotheticals, but ultimately you have like more things to talk about when things have actually happened. But before we get out of here, there's 130 of you guys in here. So please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And in the chat, let me know what your score prediction is. And who's gonna score the goals. What do you think is gonna happen? You're saying KT, Saliba, White, and Tommy, good back four. iGamer says, yeah, Jess, I agree with your lineup. Zach 10 says, who do you think is the match winner? You know, I think in big games, Gabriel Jesus has shown to have the ability to make the difference in big games, at least for Manchester City, he has. And that's one of the big reasons why I wanted him at Arsenal is not just because obviously like I love him and like I've always rated him very highly and I just felt like he needed to move and change his environment, but he's shown up in big games for Manchester City, like against Liverpool, against PSG, against Real Madrid. And so the whole point of bringing in players like Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus is to have winners in the team and them to ultimately be the difference in these big matches. And so I think if I had to guess, it would have to be Gabriel Jesus. But the other player that I do think that shows up in big games that is due kind of like a big game moment is probably Martinelli because he's one of the only players in our team that I feel like against the big teams never shies away. And so I would say either Martinelli or Gabriel Jesus. And that's no shade to Saka. Saka shows up in big games as well. But it's just something about Martinelli. I just feel like against Man City and Liverpool last season, even though Saka got the one goal, or something about the way Martinelli was playing, he just needed a goal. 3-1, Jesus 2, Saka 1. Lynn says 2-1, Arsenal, Dyer, a pen for Jesus and Martinelli. Dr. Omiza says, for me, 3-1, Jesus, Saka, and Partey. Xhaka with 2 assists. My gamer says Martinelli fears no one. Amira says 3-0 Arsenal. The things I do for Ben and Tommy to get their debut goal for us tomorrow. I'm waiting for Ben White to get his first goal. I think he's due. Yo-Yo says convincingly lost the last North London derby to the now undefeated Spurs. Can't afford to lose 5-2 Arsenal. That's a messy game. Yes, Yasaf says Arsenal 3, Spurs 1. Cousin Earl says 4-1 to the Arsenal. Craig Barlow says 2-1 with the Jesus match winner. Crispy Rice says we win 3-1 optimism. Don 1 says Saka, Odegaard, and White 3-1. Nomad says 2-0 Martinelli with 2 assists. Yeah, there's a lot of positivity here, which is good. SOF says Spurs haven't conceded 3 goals all season, haven't lost in 13 Premier League games. Anyone picking a 3-4-0 Arsenal win is diluted. At most, it'll be 2-0 or 2-1. Well, there goes, dampening the little the little positivity there. Elliot Roberts says Arsenal 3, them lot 1. Come on, you Gunners. So yeah, I think there's a lot of positivity. I will say I think this game is going to be so hard to watch just because it's Arsenal versus Spurs. But my score prediction is going to be 2-1. I do think they'll get their customary, penalty or whatever, and we'll see Kane running to the corner doing his bullshit, this thing, whatever the fuck that is. And I think Martinelli's going to score, and I also think one of our defenders is going to score. I don't know who it's going to be, but I think on a set piece, one of our defenders are going to score. I think we'll do one of those. But yeah, I'm going to go with Martinelli for one of the goals. For sure, because I just feel like he's right there. You know, he's right there. But yeah, you guys, I will be on the football terrace at 6 to do the 12th man. So make sure you guys tune into that. You guys can just type it into your search engine and football terrace and it'll pop up. And then tomorrow we'll be all day on the terrace, watch along, as well as the match review. And then obviously I'll come out with my own match review. And so, yeah, tons of content coming your way because obviously we have more games than ever. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel and I'll see you guys then. Bye now.